Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, David. David is from, my voice is loud enough. David is from the UK, and I am so honored to be here and want to thank Francisco and his family for inviting us from all over Europe to meet here. I think it's very important that this meeting, and it's for us too, it's not just for you. It's for us that we, from Denmark, Germany, Finland, the UK, is going on and off. No one.
Turn it off.
Okay, the UK, from, I hope I didn't need, Spain, there they are, the Spanish. And that we all get together at least every 2 years. We have not been together since 2009. It's important that people work together. Because if everybody is doing their own research and we never talk, the secret will be kept secret. And we have a special guest from Peru, and that's Fernando Longado, who will give you a geopolitical view of the situation. And that's wonderful that we all came here. We all decided to come to meet with Francisco, who's working in this field also. It's very important that people work together. I did put some translations in Portuguese because I don't know how many people understand English. So I'm going to go very, very quickly through my slideshow. I showed you some UFOs, but what you should understand is that it is a planetary phenomenon. That means it's not a United States phenomenon. It is not a Portuguese phenomenon, an Italian phenomenon, or a Japanese or Chinese. It is planetary. And every country is studying this. Every country. This subject matter is classified higher, top secret, than the atomic bomb. That's how important this subject is. And of course, in Europe, I always tell people in America, it's taken much more seriously. This meeting is at a university. If you were in America, it would be at a hotel. So it's much more serious in Europe because people are curious and they're doing serious work. So I'm going to discuss my work very fast because I don't want to take any time from anybody else. But my website is in 6 languages. I have volunteers who translate my work in 6 languages. I have written books that have been translated now into Spanish, but that's Italian. Gian il Vento is in Italian, and I have one in Japanese. My books are only interviews with witnesses. They have no opinion, they have no conclusions. Because after 30 years of work, I still do not know what is happening. But I do know something is happening. And I think we should be dialoguing or talking about it. So here I write for these magazines, X Times in Italy and UFO Matrix in England. I think David will talk a little bit about that. And my book is Exopolitics. This is the 3rd book I have written in the last probably Exopolitics book, Stargate to a New Reality. And it basically is the prefaces by Travis Walton. For you people that have studied ufology, you know the Travis Walton case. The movie was called Fire in the Sky. It's an abduction case. So when I used to live in Italy, I lived for 15 years in Rome, 1992 to 2007. So it was easy for me to work in Europe. And you might not believe it, but it's easier to talk about this in Europe and not have people laugh. In America, the ridicule factor, if you talk about UFOs, is still very alive. They think you are crazy, they think you should not be discussing this, and so forth. Another reason is because in America, it's commercial. It is, you go to a conference, everybody has a t-shirt, they're wearing an antenna on their head, you buy products, and it's a commercial venture in America, where here it is an intellectual endeavor. It's an intellectual. There's Olli's website. You heard Olli from Finland speak. He has an Exopolitics magazine online. And it's very important because when I speak to the ex-defense minister of Canada, and that's Paul Hellyer, the ex-defense minister of Canada, who just wrote a book about the survival manual for the human species, Light at the End of the Tunnel, and he talks about 2 chapters on UFOs, I have no place to put this. So Olli has a magazine, I can put it. I can give it to Robert in Germany and put it on his website. I can give it to Freddie in Denmark, and I can give it to the world. I can take my interview with the ex-defense minister, it's on YouTube, that I did of Canada, and I have a place to put it. I've had conferences in Europe, and you see me there with Jaime Maussan, my boss on the right, Mauricio Bayata, and James Fox, the producer of the movie Out of the Blue. How did Exopolitics Europe come about? Well, I decided to try something new, invite people, young people from different countries to come together in Rome, in Italy, and invite James Fox, the director from Out of the Blue, and guess who was there? There you will see Robert, you will see Freddie, and there was Janice Cooney from Ireland. And the next year came Pepon and Gogo from Spain, and a miracle happened, the way a miracle happened with here with Francisco. Pepon in Spain, by himself, with the help of Gogo, here we are in Barcelona, organized a conference where 1,400 people came. 1,400 people. They did not come to buy t-shirts. They did not come to be entertained. They came for information. It was an opening to this subject matter in a very serious way. And sometimes people say, I can't do anything. I'm just one person. Well, he was one person. He was one person who took the responsibility to have a conference in Barcelona. 1,400 people. Here we all are. You saw this in another presentation, but it's very important. And I'll tell you why. Because we have a responsibility, I think. I'm a journalist. I also have a master's in education. I'm a teacher. I've taught high school for 27 years. I taught at a private high school in Rome while I was doing this work. Because the work takes money. When I do work, I have to interview people, and I have to pay to go there. I have to pay to stay in a hotel. I have to transcribe everything, put it on film, put it in, and it takes money. So it's very difficult to do this work without sponsors. Very difficult. In my particular case, I was working. But you know, I remember my teacher, and you'll see him, J. Allen Hynek, who said to me, if we had to depend on volunteers to go to the moon on weekends, who didn't have a job, we would never go to the moon. And all the people that are working here, all the people from all over the world that are here, are volunteering. There is no money in this kind of research. I wanted to show you this because Carol Rosin worked with Wernher von Braun, the rocket scientist in America. And he talked about being careful because the powers that be may have a false alien invasion as the ultimate enemy. He said, first it would be communism, then it would be terrorism, and finally it would be that they will tell the world that the aliens are coming and we need to develop weapons of mass destruction to kill them. So is this important in education? Yes. Because if this were so, and whatever is there, if flying in those ships were hostile, I don't know if we should be spending millions of dollars on nuclear missiles to kill them. And Carol Rosin has asked me to tell you that she is organizing a peace treaty that she wants signed by 7 countries that says planet Earth will not take nuclear missiles into space to shoot at aliens. This is very important because this may be a possible future scenario. It is not science fiction. It could be science fact. So I'm going to speak very clearly about my job as a journalist. You have to have an ethic. You have to tell the story, and you should not make any judgments about what you're telling. And this is the National Press Club in Washington. And I said to all the camera people and all the photographers that were there, take the story, do the story, put it in the newspaper and the magazine, do not make a comment. But when I was there, they wrote the story, and the title was The Red Vote, the Blue Vote, and the Little Green Men. And when you use the word little green men in a newspaper, you will already make a judgment. But America is very difficult. My job is just to interview top-level people, like Renato that's here, and different people that have been involved in the UFO phenomenon. Right there is George Neary, Coast to Coast. He's got the only radio show that discusses this in America. It discusses it, though, from 11 at night till 3 in the morning. So you must be awake all that time to hear this material. And on the left is Dr. Edgar Mitchell, Apollo 14 astronaut, 6th man to walk on the moon. He is very important because he's one of the heroes. What is my job like? Here we are at a train station in Italy. We are going to Schmidt-Rudi, Switzerland, to deal with this case. All my work is field research, which means I go there. I speak to the people. In the case of this story, which is the Billy Meyer case, I spoke to the people in the town, near Schmidt-Rudi in Switzerland. You speak to the people because the people in Schmidt-Rudi saw the craft too. I also saw Billy Meyer. I also spoke to the people there. But you need to do research on the, in the location. I'm so glad that Ollie showed Michio Kaku. Here he is here, because it's not so much what Michio Kaku said that's important. It's that this conference in February of this year was sponsored by Saudi Arabian commercial interests. Saudi Arabian commercial interests, oil, petroleum. And they're inviting, in this conference, people paid $5,000 for the ticket, $5,000 each for the ticket. They invited Jacques Vallée, they invited Michio Kaku, they invited Nick Pope, and they invited Stanton Friedman. And there they are, sitting, and also Bill Clinton and Tony Blair. Now, when this happens, you wonder, why would the Muslim world be interested in UFOs? They were not there to be entertained. This was not Disneyland. They wanted to talk to these people. Bless him, Stanton Friedman, who we call the icon of ufology, went before all these powerful people who rule the economic planet and said, UFOs are real. He started, you can see his presentation. He's talking about all the reasons he studied most of his life. He's a nuclear physicist. Ask yourself why this year the Arab world, or this particular situation, this economic situation in Saudi Arabia, invited UFO researchers. This happened in February 26 in Chicago. Minister Louis Farragut, who is part of the Muslim Brotherhood, invited, you see AJ Gevard, There's Donna Schmidt, Jaime Maussan. Nick Pope was invited and Stanton Friedman, but they didn't go. There's Roger Lear, who's the doctor that deals with alien implants. There is a contactee who was there, a man who films UFOs, much like Billy Meyer, and he films so many of them. He lives in Italy. His name is Antonio Urzi. Urzi's film is like this. If you want to go to my website, you can see his movies. They are movies, video. Urzi is a very interesting person. He has much video. Now, people say it's not real. He's just, no. This man is strange. He has this experience. I was with him at a conference in Mexico City. And I was in a hotel with Antonio. I said, Antonio, when you go outside, do not go without me. I want to see a UFO. And we walked across the street to the World Trade Center in Mexico City, and he pointed up to a sky. I had looked up in the sky, saw nothing. He pointed up to a dot in the sky. That dot became bigger. It was a craft, and Mexican television came out and filmed it. So I was with Antonio Urzi when he was filming UFOs. Everywhere. He's been in Chile, he's been in other countries. He's even been here, I think, in Portugal, Antonio Urzi. And he has this capacity. Now, what is he doing talking to Louis Farragut, who is the head of the Muslim Brotherhood in Chicago, who said to everyone, on my website I had the interview to Don Schmidt. I interviewed Don Schmidt, he's a Roswell researcher. He said, number one, I want UFO disclosure. Number two, I will give you all the money that you need, because I told you there's no money to do research. I will give you all the money you need to do this research. Look where it's coming from. Look where the support is coming from. It's very interesting. So here's Antonio Urzi film footage again. That's my picture on the top left. I took that photo. This is the contactee. If you are interested in looking at new material, he's amazing. This video is much discussed, but I wanted to put it here because I truly believe that any video that comes out, any video on YouTube, is going to be called a hoax. Even the real ones. We have a terrible situation right now where people can fake video, but then they put real video on there, and that's called a hoax too. There is no way of proving video. But I was interested in this for one particular reason, because when the UFO came down in Israel, Jerusalem, it came down over a Muslim mosque. And when if you can go on YouTube, you see that. I was confused. My way of dealing with things is I got hold of the Israeli researcher, Barry Shamish. I got him on email, and I said, is that real? And he said, the first two are real. The last three are false. So you have real, you have somebody then making another video so that all of it looks false. And this is going to get worse in the future. I think that will be very confusing. It's called mixing information with disinformation. So then you say, it's all false. And that's very sad. So Kenneth Arnold was, from the history of the United States ufology, the first man to coin the term UFO, but flying saucer. We had messages, because my presentation deals with atomic energy, very much in the first couple of years in 50s and 60s about atomic energy, or about the dangers, the messages that came out of Hollywood about our use of atomic nuclear power. The book, The Day After Roswell, we translated into Italian. I don't know how you can get it in English, but one of my biggest stories was Colonel Philip Corso. Colonel Philip Corso worked at the Pentagon in 1960 on the actual artifacts from the Roswell crash. He explained to me that his job was to take these pieces, fiber optics, night screening devices, the transistor, high tenacity fibers, and to go to big companies like Bell Labs, Monsanto, big companies, and say, can you make this? Give it to first the Army and then give it to the American people. But he did it from pieces of a crash in 1947 called Roswell. Now, logically, if this craft crashed and government gets hold of the craft, they are definitely going to look at it, see how it flies, and use the materials. Colonel Corso's testimony, because I knew him so well, he only lived for 2 years when he was talking about this, and he could not speak in the United States, so he spoke in Italy. We brought him to Italy. He did 2 major international conferences. This changed my whole idea about why the secret is secret. I thought it was because of panic or because people did not want to see aliens. And I realized that the reason why it's secret is because it is an economic issue. It is not even, I don't think it's even religious anymore, because the Vatican has declared, number one, that the ETs are our brother and sister. This is Father Funes, the head astronomer of Castel Gandolfo, said, number one, the ETs are our brother and sister. Why would he say that if there's no ETs? And then he says, it is not against the Catholic religion to believe in them. And then the third thing he says, Jesus did not need to die for them because they are much more evolved. And they do not have original sin. Those words coming out of a Jesuit priest in the Osservatore Romano newspaper means that an institution like the church is positioning itself for something. For them to use the word ET, to say they're more evolved, and then there's doctrine there. That's doctrine, the fact that Jesus didn't need to die for them because of original sin. I felt like saying, how do you know? Because they have said something, and major institutions are positioning themselves. When I say major institutions, I also mean Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, and the economic conference we just talked about. There's religion, there's economics, there's going to be, and I think Fernando will talk more about the geopolitical view. The need for exopolitics. All that exopolitics is a university study. That's all it is, where no one is laughing. It's a serious study that should be done. My life started with Dr. J. Allen Hynek, an astronomer. He was a consultant on Steven Spielberg's movie, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. I worked with him for 6 years. There I am with him. So I knew right away this was real. I'm working with someone who worked with the Air Force. He was part of Project Blue Book. He was an astronomer, number one. He worked with the government, number two. And number three, he had files that I had to translate from Italian into English. So there I am working with Dr. Hynek. Dr. Hynek was my teacher. He told me to listen. He said, do not make judgments. Because when I was working with Dr. Hynek, there would be people coming up to him and saying, oh, I was taken aboard a craft and I had this experience and I had this experience. And in 1980, I could not go there. My mind could not believe in contact. I could not think about it. I just wanted to record lights in the sky and physical traces, something I could touch. I could not use my data bank in my brain to believe in contact. But he taught me to listen. He said, do not make judgments. Just listen. And I learned from him. He also said, look at those words, laugh, laugh, study, study. Which means study, study. I'm a teacher, that's easy. Laugh, laugh, we need a sense of humor about this. We need to be careful. So the study of exopolitics is very important for me because it's the study part. Schools, teaching the future generation what's been done already. dealing with schools. Now, look, the basis for me, and it's in my new book, the book that's just been translated into Spanish, for me, of Exopolitics, is this letter that Einstein and Oppenheimer, the creators of the atomic bomb, wrote to President Truman. This letter, it's in the book in detail, says, "We exploded the atomic bomb. Since we did this in New Mexico at the Trinity site, we have a lot of craft flying above. We need to prepare the world because if they have culture, if they are culture, we need to integrate them into the United Nations or a supra-United Nations. If these intelligent, it says here, if these intelligent beings are in the possession of culture, maybe we can learn from them." This is Einstein, and this is Oppenheimer, who created the atomic bomb. They wrote a letter to Truman about this. It's a top secret letter. In this other document here, the SOM 101, is the Majestic 12 group, which was the group created by President Truman to manage the UFO question. This question needs to be managed. In other words, somebody needs to control the UFO information. So this is out there too. This can be seen on Ryan Wood's website. Did everybody try to do something? Yes. Sir Eric Gary from Granada put a resolution to the United Nations to look at this, because you have to have a resolution. This man here is Ambassador John McDonald. He is not a ufologist. He's ambassador to Northern Ireland from the United States. He, Michael Sala, and the ex-defense minister had a conversation about preparing for contact. They said, what do we do if these people come? No, nothing is in place. We will just don't know what to do. And an ambassador of the Northern Ireland situation, who's already done citizen diplomacy, not diplomacy up here with the politicians, but citizen diplomacy, helped Michael Sala, Dr. Michael Sala, start the Exopolitics idea. And there's Dr. Michael Sala at the National Press Club. He is a college professor from Australia. He's not a ufologist. And here is the ex-defense minister of Canada. Now, the thing about what I do and what Don Schmidt does, and he's an excellent researcher. Don and I were both trained by Dr. J. Allen Hynek. We were trained to go out in the field, not to call somebody on the phone, not to use internet, but to go out and meet the people. Now, he said the problem with Roswell, he has over 90 witnesses, is that it's a race with the undertaker, which means they're dying because they're 80, 70, and 80 years old, the people that were the original witnesses. This is the Roswell situation. I am very good friends with Jesse Marcel Jr., who was a 9-year-old boy when his father brought home pieces of the Roswell crash. His father there, Jesse Marcel, was in the intelligence community. He knows the difference between a mogul balloon and something from another world. He will not bring home pieces of a mogul balloon for his son and his wife to look at. He brought home pieces of the wreckage of Roswell. He told me this because he came to my apartment in Rome. I paid for him to come to speak to the Italian people. These witnesses are incredible. They're still alive. This man is dead. This was a Walter Hott. He was the information officer during Roswell. When he died, he left a will that said, "I saw the bodies." And it's very important because I do this kind of work with these witnesses. Now, this is the event on human history, for me, this is my opinion, that changed the course of humanity. When this happened, we had a problem on planet Earth. When this happened, it changed everything because we were no longer children, but we were children with dangerous toys. And when I began researching the nuclear involvement with the cases, it changed my life because I understood that If Einstein and Oppenheimer were seeing these craft over the Trinity site, and they were there, and Robert Salas, who's a military man, I think you saw him in one of the other presentations, was present in Montana. He was present when a UFO shut down 10 nuclear missiles. In other words, he was in charge of the missiles in 1967. They were appointed, there was the Cold War. He was in charge of the missiles. And what happened was that a UFO came and deactivated 10 nuclear missiles. They were no-go, they could not fly. If that is not a matter of national security, I don't know what is. If you don't think the government is interested in that, they are. That something can shut down 10 nuclear missiles. Now, that looks like an act of war, but it could be an act of peace. Because there's a message. They didn't destroy the nuclear missiles. They didn't shoot at the arsenal in Montana. They did not do that. But what they did is say, we are here. We see your nuclear capacity. We can shut down the missiles if we want to. And in Russia, they activated them. They activated them. There's an incident in Russia where they activated the missiles. But they didn't start the launch sequence, so the missiles didn't take off. They have a very clear message. Now, the last part of my presentation, I'm going very fast because it's a new story. So anyway, I want to say one other thing. In Denver, Colorado, we have other heroes. We have Jeff Peckman right here. There's Robert Salas, who came to testify. He put a referendum in Denver to have an extraterrestrial commission be part of the government in Denver. He said, we need to study this. It is important. Go to the polls, press yes or no, and 30,000 people of 72,000 people pressed yes. They wanted to have an extra. Denver was the first state in the United States to do this. If you ask people to vote, if this subject be studied, then you will have 30,000 people say yes. And okay, this is the 1945 UFO case that I just researched in the last 2 years. I have to talk about it really fast. But it's on my website. If you can read it in English, it's 30 pages. 1945, August 15th, which is a holiday. It's a religious holiday. 2 months after the atomic bomb blasted in San Antonio, New Mexico, these two little boys, there's one little boy, 7 years old, I'll show you the other one. 2 months after the atomic bomb blast, 100 kilometers from Trinity site, two little boys were on their horses. They're two little Mexican boys. Their father had told them to go out looking for a cow that was calving, and they witnessed a UFO come in, take out a radar tower, do a half-a-mile trench, and stop. They were 7 and 9 years old. Jose Padilla was 9 years old. He is now 74 years old. And this is the area, it's San Antonio, New Mexico. Now, it's New Mexico. Remember, New Mexico is interesting as far as a place. I think that one of the presentations, it was Frederick who showed you that Burt Rutan, who makes composite airplanes, and Lord Branson, or Richard Branson, are starting a spaceport. That means they have taken $250,000 in tickets, are sending people out into space, and where is it? In New Mexico, about 50 miles from Roswell. This is real. That spaceport is built already, and they're buying tickets. So civilians will be going up into space, and NASA will be closing down the shuttle program, and it will go to civilians. It will go to business. It will not be any more controlled. So we cannot lie anymore when people are going into space and seeing this. This will be not as much a secret. Going back to Trinity site, the atomic bomb blast. This is how I work. William Brophy, who came to me from Florida, told me his father cleaned up a crash in San Antonio, New Mexico. There's William Brophy as a child. His father was a pilot. I get their documents, so I have the documents. There is San Antonio, New Mexico. San Antonio, 30 miles, about 30 or 40 miles from Trinity site where the atomic bomb went off. This was the group that was dealing with the bomb. They did not expect a crash. So what we have, Jose, who was 9 years old, tells me, there's Remy, there they are today. What he told me happened was they went up to the craft. The ground was burning because there was a fire when the craft came in. A piece of the craft broke off, and they saw 3 little creatures sliding back and forth. Now they're sliding, they're not walking, they're sliding back and forth. And they heard a high-pitched noise like pain. And so Jose wanted to help them. And Remy, the little one, did not want to. So he said he was this is a rendition of what the craft looked like, an avocado-shaped craft. There is Remy showing me the trench. That is still there. It's a big, long, half-mile trench that the UFO did. This is the area in New Mexico. He said, the beings slid back and forth in the ship and had big eyes, insect eyes. Now, they're 7 and 9 years old. So the only thing they could think of to describe the beings were, even though they were small, with long arms, he said they looked like a capomosha, which is a mantis type being. And I'm asking him about the metals. What happened? He said this, and this is very important. The only place to eat for the scientists of the atomic bomb in that area was the Owl Barn Cafe. And he said that the soldiers that cleaned up the crash cleaned it up, but they didn't know what they were doing because this is the first time it had happened, so they were throwing pieces in a hole. They threw some of the pieces in a hole so they wouldn't have to carry them. Then they put the craft on a flatbed truck, they put the UFO on the truck, and they went here. And you know, Remy knows the people that own this. He lived there. He worked there when he was a teenager. He said Oppenheimer went there to have coffee. He said the soldiers went there and they covered the craft and they went to get something to drink. And that is when 9-year-old Jose jumped on the truck, went inside the craft and pulled a piece out. He pulled it out with a cheater bar, with a bar. That is the panel that he pulled it out. There is the piece. He has it in his home. He has several pieces because the 2 little boys picked up pieces. They hid them. They put them under the floor of the sheep herder's house. There was a sheep herder there, and they put them under the floor. The army came and said, did the boys pick up anything? Did the boys hide anything? And they said, no, they didn't hide anything. These pieces have been analyzed at Los Alamos labs. These pieces are very interesting because they are just like what Colonel Corso wrote in his book, The Day After Roswell. He says, there are thin 2-inch matte oyster pieces that look like, he says, squashed insects. They are integrated circuits. He said that's the analysis with an electron microscope of the piece that Jose pulled out of the craft. It does look like does look like insects, bones, so forth. They have been analyzed. They have the pieces. These 2 boys, they're not boys anymore, told a story, but it's very important that I tell you one thing. I'm almost done. He could not speak. Remy is 72 because his wife said, I am Catholic. I do not want you to speak. It'll ruin my family. Please do not tell the world. Then something very strange happened. About 4 years ago, a UFO flew over his house. His wife looked up and saw it. It was big. It flew over the house. She began to cry and she said to her husband, now you can talk, I believe you. But the reason why I tell you this is often it's the family or it's the wife or it's somebody in the family does not want them to talk. And so the burden of truth is very bad. It's very heavy for these people. I have a new story I'm covering, and this started in Germany. This is a very interesting story. That man, Robert Malone, also was in charge of crash retrieval in New Mexico. His wife, who's 80 years old, told me she was told by her husband about the crashes in New Mexico. Why New Mexico? Very interesting, and I do that. Now, one of the things that we have to understand in the whole UFO phenomenon is we have the elephant standing in the living room. That means that it is here. Whatever is happening is here. We need to look at it from all different angles. It has to do with exotic technologies. I know that from Colonel Philip Corso. I also asked Remy Baca, I said, how come we don't know about your case? He said, my case is in the files of the Atomic Energy Commission. It is not in the files of the Air Force. So the Atomic Energy Commission knew about the 1945, two years before Roswell case. I think that we need to look at this. I think that we need to look at the back engineering that was done. And I think Frederick did an excellent presentation on what the world could possibly be like if these technologies were released. What can we do? We can do many things. And why should we study this as a teacher and a mother? I say because we need to prepare an intelligent, informed future generation, because we need to establish a new worldview about our universe. We are not alone. Thank you very much for your attention.